Welcome. In front of me I have the Xiaomi 12T Pro, and today I'll go over unboxing along with a quick overview of this device. So let's just pop it straight open with this 3D printed attempt of a knife. There we go. Now, judging by the size of the box, we do get basically everything that we need. So number one, we get a case. Flimsy one, but still better than nothing. And we get the phone itself in a nice blue color. We get some paper. We get a 120 watt charger. This is more than like laptops, some of the laptops have. So there we go, that's an absolute unit of a charger. And we get the cable for it, Type A to Type C. And that's all we get in the box. I mean, that's basically the entire everything that it can get for the phone. So anyway, the charger itself right here is well, already outstanding. It's well, about 5 times better than, actually over 5 times. It's 6 times better than what Samsung phones can even charge at, and Samsung phones don't even come with a charger in a box. So there we go. Now looks like I do need to glue this. Can't just slip the phone out. There we go. So there is our device. I'm gonna turn it on. We do have a pre-applied protective film on here. It is coming off in an edge right here. Anyway, so yeah, we have a protective film right here. Now, one thing that I'm kind of surprised is that the device doesn't have curved display, so it's just flat, as you can see. Now, once the device is on, you can see the display right here. So this is a 6.67 inch display with a resolution of 1220 by 2712. Jeez, that's a really wonky resolution. Let me just change. Actually, no, the region can stay this way. So yeah, this is, like I said, wonky wonky resolution right here. But apart from that, it's a AMOLED display, 120 Hz refresh rate, Dolby Vision, HDR10 Plus certification, typical brightness of 500 nits, and peak brightness of 900, which is really far from what Apple, for instance, offers with their iPhone 14s, which peak brightness is apparently 2000, so more than double of this device. And keep in mind that peak brightness is brightness that is not sustainable. So it's not that you can just slide it up and it's gonna be 2000, or in this case 900. It's going to go to like the 900 here when you go outside, usually when you have direct sunlight, and the phone detects that there is like really big difference in brightness, so it will crank up the brightness of the display too, so you can actually see it outdoors, but it's only for a limited time, so it might be like minute, 2 minutes, and then it's just gonna drop it back down. The reason for that is it's most likely so that so you don't have some kind of like burn-ins in the display, or the display doesn't like just somehow get damaged from it. And obviously also battery consumption. With higher brightness, you will consume more of your battery life. So there we go. Now, once I finish this up, you will see their typical MIUI, I believe it is. Yeah, it's MIUI 13, but come on, load the apps. You could have done this before. You had time. Okay, well, you know what, while this is loading up, so I'm gonna flip it over to the cameras. So you can see we have a triple camera setup. We do have some massive sensor right here. So the main sensor right here, this humongous little square right here, this is the 200 megapixel wide sensor, f1.7. And then we get a far cry from the 200 at 8 megapixel ultra wide, and then even stupider, 2 megapixel macro. Now, why they included a 2 megapixel macro here is just absolutely effing baffling to me, because at 200 megapixel main sensor, I can guarantee you can take better macro shots than this macro dedicated lens, even if it was better. And you know what, I'm just gonna test this out just to show you what I mean. So let's see, we're gonna look for macro, just so we can get the disappointment out of the way. Where's the macro? To like get somewhere and it's gonna pop it up that hey, use macro, or what the heck? Here? Ah, there we go. So it's a little bit hidden. Now, let's see what I would be able to capture in a really nice way. No, I'm gonna take the box. Now, just to make this as fair as possible, you just grab the little microfiber cloth, just in case I maybe, fingered up the cameras right here, and we can just get the macro. Boom. I'm also gonna move the light just so I can get as much light as possible, because as you'll see, once you start like trying to get up close, you do create a shadow, and this just might make the photos come out a little bit worse. Now on the camera I can see that this is absolutely overblown, but for this phone right here you can see it's completely fine. Just so I want to make that clear. Are you kidding me? You can see that it's I'm like, I don't know, 3-5 centimeters away from the box, and it's already too close for the macro, the dedicated macro. It looks like I need to be about 10 centimeters away from the picture, just so the macro can actually focus on it. There we go. So that is as close as I can get. Now the reason this matters is because the closer we can get, assuming the camera can focus on it, the better macro shot you can get. Now I'm gonna turn off the macro right here, which, it's already turned off. We're also gonna go into more. I guess we're gonna select Ultra HD. I assume this is going to be just 15 megapixels, which is fine. 15 megapixels is still gonna outperform the macro in any kind of capacity. So the reason this this might be actually more beneficial over the 200 is because it's gonna take 200 megapixel photo, and then I use that information, bin it down to 50 megapixels. So it's gonna combine a bunch of pixels into one, giving you more data in the photo, while still keeping it super sharp and removing this kind of like artifacting, this blurriness and stuff like that. So now let's just see. There we go. So our two photos right now. The first one you'll see is the macro, not the macro, what am I saying? The 200, or technically 50 in this case. And we're just gonna zoom it in. Let's move the box out of the way. So that's how the 50 megapixels looks like. You can get it. Come on. No, not what I want. I want to max out the brightness. There we go. So there we go. That's the 200. And you can get pretty close. You do get to see some blurriness once you zoom in this close, but you can see like this grooves, damages on the box right here are kind of a little bit visible on the camera, but not as much as they are here. Now let's get a look at 2 megapixels macro, which is this one. Oof. So number one, I can't get as close, and you can already see at this distance it's already blurry. So yeah, you do have massive difference, and this was just using 50 megapixels. This will get even more wild if, for instance, I do probably something like this. I just test it out. I close this off. I'm gonna go into photo. I'm gonna do 2 times zoom. I will need to keep the phone a little bit more steady, just because at zoom you will be more prone to shakes. There we go. Good enough. So now we're looking at 2x zoom. I think this actually might be a little bit sharper, though this is artificially sharpened. It's I assume using like AI, but you can see this also looks pretty freaking good, and obviously significantly better than this. This is just disappointing. By the way, I can't get any closer. That's as close as I can get. So there we go. So going back to what I was getting at the beginning, the 2 megapixel here is just an absolute middle finger to you from Xiaomi. Like, you were doing good, Xiaomi. You were doing good with the cameras. You didn't have to F it up with the 2 megapixel macro. We aren't idiots. When we're paying premium for a flagship device, we know what we're buying. We're not absolute effing morons. So go F yourself with the 2 megapixel macro. It's useless and you know it. So F off with it. So you could technically take black tape, and tape it up just so you never take a photo with it, because it's just gonna come out worse, without any kind of doubt, than taking it with, for instance, 2x zoom or the 50 megapixel bend down photo. So something to keep in mind. You have only two cameras right here. Anyway, now that I touched upon the back cameras, let's just quickly mention the front one, which is a 20 megapixel selfie shooter, a wide sensor, shoots at 1080p, 60 frames, while the back ones shoot at 8K 24, and if you drop it to 4K, you get to shoot at 60. So there we go. Now moving on from that, we're gonna move on into the internals. So this phone is running the newest Snapdragon, at least at the time of recording this. The newest one is the Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1, which is the same thing that, for instance, the Fold 4 is running, and several other phones that have been released at second half of 2022. So it's obviously one of the most powerful devices in terms of processing power, probably only beaten by something like a iPhone, what is it, 14, 16, whatever they have. I think it's 14 right now. So yeah, iPhone 14, which is running the Bionic A16 at the moment. And that processor, if I'm correct, is significantly better. So there we go. But in case of Android phones, this is the top of the shelf, the best you can get. Now, you do also have a couple of versions of this device. So at the very lowest end, you get 128 gigs of storage with 8 gigs of RAM. And with that being said, I'm gonna try to find in my absolute mess right here a little SIM ejector, which there we go, I just found, just so I can show you that this phone has no expendable storage. There we go. You have dual SIM tray, so you can put a SIM card on either side, but you have no SD card support here. So you're stuck with whatever you purchase, which is, for instance, 128 gigs at the very lowest, and at the very highest it also gets stupid because it tops at 256 gigs. When you can record at 8K 24 frames, that 256 storage, if you tend to record at that resolution, it's gonna run out pretty quick. And also at 4K 60, which probably will be the sweet spot for everybody, just because you get a really crisp resolution and decent frame rate, also you will be running out of that storage really quickly. So would be nice if either they would have allowed you to get a 512 gig storage option of this device, or give you a support for SD card, but you got neither of those. At least you have UFS 3.1 storage, so that means that whenever you're recording at these high resolutions like 8K, 4K, the phone will then quicker, compared to some maybe other devices, process that video. And also when you're playing it back and skipping through it or editing that video, the time it will take you to edit usually would be bottlenecked by storage speed. Here you basically have the best storage speed that you can possibly have on Android, apart from maybe NVMe storage like iPhones have, but still, for Android, top of the shelf, so there we go. Now, moving on, in terms of the battery size right here, this is a relatively small device. and the battery size here is 5000 milliamps. So you do get a pretty decent battery size here for the size of this actual phone. And then just to compare it to other things, iPhone 14 Pro Max, which is the big boy, it's super big. It's most certainly significantly bigger than this. Just to kind of give you actual numbers right here. So for instance, the screen size, let me just quickly open it up. So screen size on iPhone is 6.7. Now this doesn't seem like that big of a deal. This is 6.67. While iPhone has 6.7, so that will be just 0.03 inches bigger, but iPhone is significantly wider. So the phone is basically as tall as this, but it has some width to it. And it's also, I believe, thicker. So with that in mind, iPhones, the big ones, the biggest ones that you can get, come with 4300 milliamp hour battery, or 4323 to be exact, while this comes with 5000. This is a massively bigger battery over the iPhone. So yeah. Now I'll mention also another thing. This is Xiaomi. They do have, from what I remember, some aggressive power managing solutions to this. So certain cases you might not be getting notifications from some apps because the phone decides to just kind of terminate the apps, so they can't really run to preserve battery. So that's, I guess, one downside, but this is typical from Chinese devices like Xiaomi, for instance, and also not only limited to this brand. Now moving on to last thing, I'm gonna just touch upon a little bit further with the battery. So using that stupid 120 watt charger, and stupid I mean in a positive sense, I'm saying stupid because 120 watts is just insane. You get to charge your phone fully from 0 to 100 in advertised 19 minutes. Damn, that's impressive. Now what's even more impressive is the price of this device, which comes significantly below $1,000. So this phone comes at about 630 euros. Now let me just put it this way. I'm gonna grab this because this is what I spend my hard-earned money on. So this is a Fold 4, the newest, most flagship from Samsung. As you can see, I'm charging it right now because battery here is absolute dog shit. And I've been charging it for the past 20 minutes. The phone was at like 15%, now it's at 40. I still have 60 more percent to go, and I'll be charging it for advertised, at least I was saying, 53 minutes. And I am using a basically highest charging speeds right here using Samsung charger, Samsung cable, if that is, because sometimes Samsung does give you fuss about what kind of cables you're using. This is all Samsung and it's charging at the highest speed as possible right here. To charge this, technically 58 more percent, I need 52 minutes. In 52 minutes, this device would charge almost 3 times to full. This has smaller battery by decent margin of like 700 milliamps. So let that sink in here. And also, this phone costs, well, 3 times less actually. Maybe a little bit less than 3 times. So Fold 4 comes at $1,800, just magical number, right? Fantastic. This comes at 630. Now, I know Fold has this magical gimmick of unfolding and having almost a tablet-like experience, but trust me when I tell you it's not as glamorous and you don't get to utilize this as much, or at least in a way that you would consider it to be adequate for the price that you pay. Most of the apps don't really scale well with this kind of aspect ratio, because most of the apps on phones are aspect ratio based. So if you open up Instagram, photos will basically feel like they're just zoomed in, and you might not even see the entire photo on Instagram because it's gonna be cut out on top and bottom. Something to really keep in mind. Now, going back to this device, because well, the video is about this one, for this kind of price, for a phone that basically does everything that this one does, and in certain cases most certainly better, it's hard not to recommend this phone. It's really affordably priced. It has top of the line specs with processor, with cameras, though cameras might be objective. Probably DSO marks aren't the highest, but in terms of like raw pixels, this obviously has 200 megapixel camera, so gonna be getting some really high resolution photos right here. But with that being said, the entire package right here, if you're just don't mind overlooking the cameras, because 200 megapixels doesn't really indicate that you will be taking fantastic photos. For instance, you might not be taking good photos in a low quality or in a low light environment, though this is something that you need to test out. I don't know how well this camera performs in different environments and how it stacks in DSO marks, so it's something that you might want to check out. But if we just overlook that and look at the specs, what you get in a box and how much this costs compared to other devices, it's hard to compete with this. It's a fantastic device overall, and just honestly, just the inclusion of a charger is nice to see. And they didn't just include a charger, they included a 120 watt charger, which, yeah. Now, one thing that I'll also clarify about the charging here, if you're gonna be daily driving this phone and you do want to have a little bit longer battery longevity, I don't mean how long the device lasts from day to day, I mean how long the device lasts from year to year, you might want to limit your charging speed from 120 to something more reasonable, because really charging it at this kind of speeds will degrade the battery a little bit quicker. So if you don't want to be forced into replacing batteries a year down the line because it just can't keep up the charge as well as it did before at the start, then just try to change it. Now, usually phones like this would have some kind of battery settings in, well, the settings. So I'm gonna quickly see if we can find anything in here under the battery. So boost charging speeds. So we have reminders and notified about boosting. So we have right here. Okay, so it is turned off by default, looks like, the 120 watts charging. And it has also this notification right here to let you know when you're charging it at this insane charging speeds. So that is really nice here. We have also optimized battery, so optimized charging to reduce battery aging. MIUI learns from your whatever. Okay, so using this, the phone, I believe this is just strictly for like charging in general, not the 120 watt charging. So what it does is what most of the phones do nowadays. It will learn when you charge the device and how frequently you use it when you charge it. So for instance, if you tend to plug in your phone to charge at night when you go to sleep, it will learn that you're not using the device at that time, and it will charge it up to like 80%, as it's kind of shown, or whatever it might be here. I believe it's 80, it's kind of showing it, and then stop the charging. It's doing that to not cram as much energy into the battery when you're not using it, just because it's not necessarily needed, and topping up your battery isn't also the best thing for the battery, especially when you're not using it. Now, it will also learn when you unplug the phone, and after like a couple days, it will know that, for instance, if you get up at 8, it's gonna just charge it to 100 from that 80 from like, I don't know, a couple minutes before you get up. So for instance, at like 7:30, it's gonna top it up and then stop charging it altogether when it's 100%, which again helps you with your battery longevity right here. But that's about all I have to say here. So like I mentioned before, fantastic device, recommended if you're thinking about picking it up. If you don't mind the the aggressive power management of Xiaomi, for instance. But if we just overlook the software and power management, this phone is just fantastic. So with that being said, if you found this very helpful, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and thanks for watching.